Right now, as you're listening to this, you're doing something that most people think is impossible. You're practicing Buddhism without even knowing it. Welcome to Moonmine Temple, where tonight you'll discover that the peace you've been searching for has been hiding in the most ordinary moments of your life. Whether you're lying in bed, unable to sleep, walking through your neighborhood, or sitting in your car before going into work, you've stumbled upon something that could change everything. And here's the beautiful part. You don't need to become someone different or learn complicated techniques. You just need to see what's already here. If this feels right to you, I'd love to know where in the world you're joining us tonight. Drop a comment with your city or just the time where you are. There's something magical about knowing we're connected across time zones, all discovering the same ancient wisdom together. Maybe adjust your pillow, take a deep breath, or simply let your shoulders drop, because what I'm about to share will surprise you. In a quiet monastery in France, families from around the world gather every summer to learn something revolutionary about daily life. Parents arrive thinking they need to choose between taking care of their children and finding inner peace. They expect meditation to happen in silence, away from crying babies and busy schedules. But the wise teachers there know a secret that changes everything. The secret is this: your family time is your practice time. Washing dishes is meditation. Being patient with a cranky child is spiritual training. Sitting in traffic is an opportunity for peace. Everything you think is getting in the way of your spiritual life actually is your spiritual life. Think about your morning routine for a moment. You probably rush through washing your breakfast dishes so you can get to more important things. But what if I told you that those few minutes at the sink could become the most peaceful part of your day? What if washing your coffee cup could teach you more about happiness than 100 self-help books? In Zen Buddhism, there's a teaching that when you wash dishes, you wash them completely. Not thinking about your to-do list, not planning your next conversation, not solving tomorrow's problems. Just feeling the warm water on your hands, watching soap bubbles form and disappear, being fully present with this simple task. This isn't just about being mindful, it's about discovering that peace doesn't require perfect conditions. Here's what most people don't understand about Buddhist practice. They think it happens for 30 minutes in the morning and 30 minutes at night during formal meditation. But that leaves 23 hours of your day untouched by peace. The real question isn't whether you can find calm in a quiet room. It's whether you can find calm while your kids are arguing, your boss is demanding, and your phone won't stop buzzing. Tonight, you're going to learn something that sounds impossible, but is absolutely true. The very things you think are preventing you from finding peace, your busy schedule, your family responsibilities, your ordinary daily tasks, are actually perfect opportunities to discover the freedom you've been seeking. This isn't about adding more to your already full life. This is about seeing your life with completely new eyes. It's about understanding why Buddhist masters say that washing one bowl mindfully can bring more joy than achieving everything on your bucket list while distracted. The families in that French monastery discovered something that will transform how you see everything. They learned that the practice isn't separate from real life. The practice is real life, approached with awareness, kindness, and the radical understanding that this moment, exactly as it is, contains everything you need. By the time we finish our journey together tonight, you'll understand why a simple monastery teaches that the path to extraordinary peace runs directly through the most ordinary activities. You'll know why washing dishes can be a doorway to freedom, and why the ancient art of letting go might be the exact thing that finally lets you have everything you've ever truly wanted. There's something happening in our world right now that would have fascinated ancient Buddhist masters. We have more ways to measure power than ever before: followers on social media, numbers in bank accounts, titles on business cards, square footage in our homes. But if you look closely at the people who seem to have all this power, you'll notice something strange. Many of them seem anything but peaceful. This isn't a criticism, it's an observation that points to something profound about the nature of true power. Buddhist wisdom, developed over thousands of years, recognizes three completely different kinds of power that most of our world has forgotten about. These aren't powers that control others or accumulate wealth. They're powers that free you from the exhausting cycle of always needing more. When Buddhist teachers evaluate someone's spiritual development, they don't ask how much that person has accumulated. They don't count meditation hours, retreat attendance, or years of practice. Instead, they look for three specific qualities that reveal genuine spiritual maturity. These three qualities are so different from what our culture celebrates that recognizing them can completely shift how you see success, strength, and what it means to live well. The first spiritual power is compassion, but not the weak, doormat version that some people imagine. Real compassion is like being a steady lighthouse in someone's storm. You don't try to change their weather, but your presence helps them navigate through it safely. Think about the person in your life who makes you feel most understood. They probably don't give you advice all the time or try to fix your problems. They just have this quality of being completely present with whatever you're experiencing. That's compassion as a spiritual power. It grows stronger when you use it, and it never runs out. True compassion also means being kind to yourself, especially when you're struggling. Most of us have learned to be our own harshest critics, thinking that constant self-judgment will somehow motivate us to be better. But compassion recognizes that beating yourself up actually makes change harder, not easier. When you practice genuine self-compassion, you create the safe internal environment where growth naturally happens. The second spiritual power is wisdom, and here's where it gets interesting. Wisdom isn't about collecting more information or having opinions about everything. It's about seeing clearly through the fog of confusion that clouds most of our daily decisions. You know those moments when you're really upset about something, and then a week later you realize it wasn't nearly as important as you thought. Wisdom is having that perspective available right when you need it, not just in hindsight. Wisdom also means recognizing the difference between what's actually happening and the stories your mind tells you about what's happening. Your boss sends you a short email, and your mind creates an entire narrative about how they're probably unhappy with your work. Your friend doesn't respond to your text immediately, and suddenly you're convinced they're angry at you. Wisdom sees these mental stories for what they are, just thoughts, not facts. This doesn't mean you become naive or stop paying attention to real signals. It means you stop exhausting yourself by reacting to imaginary problems. But the third spiritual power is the one that will change everything for you tonight. Buddhist masters call it the power of cutting off and letting go, and it's the secret to a kind of freedom that most people never discover. This power works in exactly the opposite way that our culture teaches us power should work. Instead of gaining strength by accumulating more, this power grows by releasing what you don't actually need. Here's what's revolutionary about this understanding. In almost every area of life, we're taught that more equals better. More education makes you smarter. More money makes you secure. More achievements make you successful. More possessions make you comfortable. The assumption is always that the solution to any problem is to add something to your life. Feeling insecure? Get more money. Feeling lonely? Get more friends. Feeling unsuccessful? Get more achievements. Buddhist wisdom suggests something that might sound crazy at first, that this endless accumulation often creates the very problems it's supposed to solve. The more you have to protect. The more you achieve, the more pressure you feel to maintain your achievements. The more you own, the more you worry about losing what you own. What looks like security from the outside often feels like a beautiful prison from the inside. Consider how this plays out in the workplace. Someone gets promoted to a position of authority, which society would call gaining power. But now they have to maintain that image of authority, watch their words more carefully, and navigate office politics. They have more responsibilities, but often less freedom to be authentic. They've gained external power, but may have lost internal peace. Think about someone you know who seems to have everything: the perfect job, the ideal relationship, the beautiful home, the impressive social media presence. Now, think about their actual daily experience. Are they more relaxed than people with less? Do they worry less? Do they sleep better at night? Or do they seem to be running faster and faster just to keep up with the life they've created? This is where the three spiritual powers become not just beautiful ideas, but practical tools for living. When you develop real compassion, you stop needing other people to be different for you to be okay. When you cultivate true wisdom, you stop being fooled by the stories your anxious mind tells you about what you need to be happy. And when you practice the power of letting go, you discover that the things you thought you needed for security were often the very things preventing you from feeling truly secure. Let me give you a contemporary example of how this works. Imagine someone who spends hours every day managing their online image, carefully choosing photos, crafting the perfect captions, monitoring likes and comments. From the outside, this might look like they're building their personal brand and gaining social power. But from the inside, they're often anxious about whether people approve, exhausted from maintaining an image, and increasingly disconnected from their authentic self. Now imagine the same person practicing the power of letting go. They still might share things online, but they're not attached to the response. They post what feels authentic to them and then release any expectation about how others will react. Suddenly, they have all that mental energy back. They're present for their actual life instead of constantly documenting it for others. They feel more connected to themselves and, paradoxically, more genuinely connected to others. This pattern shows up everywhere once you start looking for it. The parent who's so focused on their child's achievements that they miss enjoying their child's actual personality. The person so busy networking for career advancement that they forget to appreciate the job they already have. The individual so concerned with appearing spiritual that they lose touch with genuine inner peace. This is what Buddhist teachers mean when they say that spiritual power works differently than worldly power. Worldly power often requires keeping others down, creating scarcity, or maintaining control. Spiritual power grows when you share it. The more compassionate you become, the more compassion you have available. The wiser you grow, the more clearly you see. The more you practice letting go, the more spacious and free you feel. But here's the part that might surprise you. These three spiritual powers don't require you to retreat from the world or give up your responsibilities. You can be deeply engaged with your work, your family, your community, and your goals while developing these powers. In fact, you might find that compassion makes you more effective in relationships, wisdom helps you make better decisions, and the ability to let go allows you to take appropriate risks and recover more quickly from setbacks. The question isn't whether you should have ambitions or care about outcomes. The question is whether you can pursue what matters to you without being enslaved by the need for specific results. Can you work hard for something while holding the results lightly? Can you love someone deeply without needing them to be different? Can you enjoy what you have without constantly comparing it to what others have? This is what those families in the French monastery discovered during their summer retreat. They came thinking they needed to choose between being spiritual and being engaged with real life. But they learned that the three spiritual powers actually make you more present, more effective, and more genuinely helpful in whatever role you're playing. When you have compassion, you stop wasting energy trying to change people and start being truly useful to them. When you have wisdom, you see through the drama and confusion to what actually matters. And when you have the power of letting go, you can respond to life from a place of choice rather than being pushed around by circumstances. The most remarkable thing about these three powers is how they transform leadership, whether you're leading a family, a team, or just your own life. Instead of leading through fear, control, or the promise of rewards, you lead through presence, clarity, and genuine care for others' well-being. People trust this kind of leadership because they can sense that it comes from strength, not insecurity. Tonight, we're going to focus most deeply on this third power, the power of cutting off and letting go. Not because the other two aren't important, but because this one holds the key to the others. When you learn to release what you don't actually need, you create space for natural compassion to arise. When you stop grasping so tightly to your opinions and preferences, wisdom has room to emerge. The power of letting go is like clearing the clutter from a beautiful room. Suddenly you can see what was always there. Now we come to the heart of what Buddhist wisdom has been teaching for over 2,000 years, and it's something that will probably challenge everything you've been told about how to live a good life. Most spiritual traditions, most self-help approaches, most therapeutic methods focus on adding something to your experience. Add more gratitude, add more positive thinking, add more meditation, add more self-love, add more boundaries, add more mindfulness to your day. But Buddhist practice works in exactly the opposite direction. The path to freedom isn't about accumulating more spiritual experiences or collecting more wisdom. It's about recognizing what you're already carrying that you don't actually need and gently setting it down. Think about it this way. If your house is cluttered, you don't solve the problem by buying more organizing systems. You solve it by removing what doesn't belong there. Your mind works the same way. This understanding immediately puts Buddhist practice at odds with almost everything our culture teaches about personal development. We're told that the answer to any problem is to get more of something. Feeling insecure? Get more achievements. Feeling disconnected? Get more social connections. Feeling spiritually empty? Get more spiritual practices. But what if the real problem isn't that you don't have enough of the right things, but that you're carrying too much of the wrong things? Even in Buddhist communities, there's often a subtle trap of accumulation. People start collecting teachings, comparing different meditation techniques, building spiritual identities around how much they know about Buddhism. But the moment you start thinking, I understand this teaching, or I've mastered this practice, you're moving away from the freedom that the teaching was pointing toward. The medicine becomes another possession to defend, rather than a tool for liberation. Buddhist teachers identify 3 specific mental patterns that create most of our unnecessary suffering. They call these the 3 afflictions, and once you learn to recognize them, you'll start seeing them everywhere. Not just in dramatic situations, but in the tiny moments that make up most of your daily experience. The beautiful thing is that you don't have to fight these patterns or eliminate them completely. You just need to see them clearly enough that they lose their power to control your reactions. The first affliction is what Buddhist teaching calls craving, but that word might mislead you into thinking this is only about dramatic addictions or obvious desires. Craving shows up much more subtly than that. It's any time your mind reaches for something different than what's actually here right now. It could be reaching for a different mood, a different response from someone, a different outcome to a situation, or even a different version of yourself. Craving also includes what Buddhist psychology calls subtle greed, the barely noticeable preferences that seem innocent but gradually accumulate into a heavy burden of always wanting things to be slightly different. You prefer your coffee a certain temperature, your commute to take exactly the right amount of time, your co-workers to be in good moods, your weather to match your plans. None of these preferences are wrong, but notice how much mental energy goes into managing them. Let me share how this plays out in a way that will probably make you smile with recognition. In that French monastery I mentioned, something happened one summer that perfectly illustrates how subtle craving can be. The community received a donation of beautiful new yellow chairs for their dining area. These chairs were bright, comfortable, and clearly higher quality than the old white chairs from 20 years ago. the faded green ones from a decade back, or the black chairs that were only 5 years old. Now, remember, this is a monastery where people come to practice letting go of material attachments. These are families who've traveled across the world to learn about finding contentment with what they have. But what happened when those yellow chairs appeared? Suddenly, during meal times, people would arrive a few minutes early to secure them. Families would gather all the yellow chairs for their group, then add a few green ones so it wouldn't look too obvious that they were claiming the best seats. Nobody was being greedy in any dramatic way. Nobody was fighting over chairs or being rude. But there was this subtle reaching, this gentle preference for the newer, more comfortable option. And here's what's fascinating. Those chairs weren't actually more comfortable in any meaningful way. They were just newer, brighter, more obviously special. The preference wasn't really about physical comfort. It was about the mental comfort of having something that seemed better than what others had. This same pattern shows up in meditation practice itself. You might start by just wanting to feel a little more peaceful, but before long you find yourself preferring certain meditation experiences over others. You want the sessions where your mind feels calm, rather than the ones where it feels restless. You prefer the insights that feel profound over the ordinary moments of just sitting. You begin to crave spiritual experiences the same way you once craved material things. This is craving in its most common form, not dramatic lust or desperate need, but simply the constant, low-level preference for things to be different than they are. It shows up when you're standing in line at the store and notice that the other line seems to be moving faster. It appears when you're scrolling through social media and comparing your ordinary Tuesday to someone else's highlight reel. It emerges when you're having a perfectly pleasant conversation with someone but find yourself wishing they were a little funnier, a little more interested in your stories, a little different than they actually are. The exhausting thing about craving isn't that it's evil or wrong, it's that it never stops. You get the yellow chair, and then you notice that some yellow chairs are positioned better than others. You get the promotion you wanted, and then you start thinking about the next promotion. You find the perfect relationship, and then you start noticing small ways your partner could be even more perfect. The mind that's trained to always want something different will find something to want different in any situation. But here's what's beautiful about Buddhist understanding of craving. You don't have to fight it or feel guilty about it. You just have to see it clearly. When you notice your mind reaching for the yellow chair, you can smile and think, "Oh, there's that reaching again." When you catch yourself wishing someone would respond differently to your text message, you can gently recognize, there's that wanting things to be different. The moment you see craving clearly, it loses its grip on you. Craving also has a sneaky quality where it disguises itself as necessity. Your mind will tell you that you need that particular parking spot, that specific outcome to your meeting, that exact response from your friend. But when you look closely, you'll notice that most of what your mind calls needs are actually just preferences that have gotten a little demanding. The practice isn't about eliminating all preferences. It's about holding them lightly enough that you can be okay when they're not met. The second affliction is anger, but again, this isn't just about dramatic rage or obvious conflict. Anger, in Buddhist understanding, is any pushing away energy in your mind. It's resistance to what's actually happening. It shows up as irritation when someone drives too slowly in front of you, annoyance when your technology doesn't work the way you expect, or frustration when your carefully made plans get disrupted. Anger is often the flip side of craving. When you can't have what you want, the mind switches to pushing away what you don't want. When the yellow chair isn't available, anger might arise toward whoever is sitting in it. When your meditation isn't peaceful, anger might emerge toward the distracting thoughts. When your day doesn't go according to plan, anger appears toward the circumstances that disrupted it. Anger also appears as that internal resistance you feel when someone gives you feedback you don't want to hear, when your body doesn't feel the way you want it to feel, or when your emotions are different than you think they should be. It's the mental energy you spend arguing with reality about how things ought to be different. One of the most subtle forms of anger is spiritual anger, the frustration that arises when your spiritual practice isn't progressing the way you think it should. You might feel angry at yourself for having the same worried thoughts you had last month, frustrated that meditation isn't making you as peaceful as you expected, or irritated that you're still getting triggered by the same situations. This anger toward your own spiritual progress becomes another obstacle to the very peace you're seeking. The problem with anger isn't that it damages other people, though it sometimes does. The problem is that it's like holding a hot coal with the intention of throwing it at someone else. You're the one who gets burned first. Every moment you spend mentally arguing with what's already happened is a moment you're not available for responding wisely to what's actually here. But anger, like craving, isn't something to be eliminated through force. The practice is to recognize when anger is arising and meet it with curiosity rather than more resistance. Oh, interesting. There's anger here. What is it trying to protect? What does it think needs to be different? When you can observe anger without being consumed by it, you often discover valuable information about what you care about and what boundaries might be needed. The third affliction is ignorance, and this one might surprise you. Buddhist ignorance isn't about not knowing enough facts or being uneducated. It's about not seeing clearly how your own mind works. It's the confusion that makes you think your thoughts are facts, your emotions are emergencies, and your opinions are absolute truths. Ignorance shows up when you take your worried thoughts about the future as if they were accurate predictions. It appears when you assume that other people's behavior is primarily about you rather than about their own internal experience. It emerges when you believe that your current mood or perspective is the only valid way to see a situation. Perhaps the most common form of ignorance is not recognizing the difference between your direct experience and your interpretation of that experience. Someone doesn't respond to your text immediately, and you create an entire story about what that means. You feel tired in the afternoon, and you decide this says something definitive about your health or energy levels. You have a disagreement with a friend, and you conclude that the relationship is damaged. The gap between what actually happens and what your mind makes it mean is where most unnecessary suffering lies. Ignorance also includes not understanding the impermanent nature of all experience. You feel sad and think you'll always feel sad, You're angry and believe this anger defines who you are. You're confused and assume confusion is a permanent state. But every emotion, every thought, every situation is constantly changing. What feels overwhelming right now will be different in an hour, a day, a week. These three afflictions, craving, anger, and ignorance, work together to create most of the unnecessary drama in your daily life. You want something to be different, craving. You resist what's actually happening, anger, and you don't see clearly what's going on in your own mind, ignorance. The beautiful thing is that just recognizing these patterns is the beginning of freedom from them. Let me tell you another story from that monastery that shows how this works in practice. One Christmas, someone decided to do something thoughtful for the monks. They had each monk's name engraved on their drinking cup. Before this, all the cups looked exactly the same. When it was time for tea, any monk could pick up any cup, use it, and leave it for the next person. There was a natural flow of sharing, a sense that everything belonged to everyone. But the moment each cup had a name on it, something shifted. Now, when a monk went into someone else's room and saw a cup with his name on it, a tiny thought would arise: how did my cup get here? It should be in my room. Before the names were engraved, there was no my cup or your cup, just cups that served their purpose. But the instant ownership was established, a subtle form of suffering began. The cup hadn't changed. Its usefulness hadn't changed. The tea tasted exactly the same. But the mind's relationship to the cup had transformed from freedom to attachment. Suddenly, there was something to keep track of, something to be concerned about, something that could be in the wrong place. This illustrates how identity creates suffering even in the most innocent situations. The monk didn't want multiple cups or expensive cups. He just wanted his cup to be where he expected it to be. The suffering wasn't caused by the cup itself, but by the mental concept of ownership that the name created. This is how attachment works in your daily life. You think having things makes you happy, but often it's the sense of ownership itself that creates anxiety. You worry about losing what you have, protecting what you've gained, making sure what's yours stays yours. The very things you acquire to increase your security often become new sources of insecurity. But the story goes deeper than just material possessions. You also create mental ownership of ideas, relationships, even spiritual experiences. My opinion, my way of doing things, my spiritual practice, my understanding of how life should work. Each time the mind claims ownership, it also creates the possibility of threat, loss, or having that ownership challenged. The power of cutting off and letting go begins with questioning this entire framework of mental ownership. What if you could use what you need without the heavy burden of possessing it? What if you could enjoy what you have without the constant anxiety of potentially losing it? What if you could hold your opinions, your preferences, even your identity lightly enough that none of it could be threatened? This brings us to one of the most challenging aspects of letting go, releasing your ideas about who you are. Most people spend enormous energy maintaining and defending their self-concept. I am someone who has it together. I am a good parent. I am successful. I am spiritual. I am someone who doesn't get rattled by small things. These self-concepts might seem positive, but they become prisons the moment you need to defend them. What happens when the good parent makes a parenting mistake? What happens when the spiritual person feels petty or angry? What happens when the successful person experiences failure? Suddenly, you're not just dealing with the actual situation, you're also dealing with the threat to your identity. You spend energy defending who you think you are, instead of simply responding to what's actually happening. The trap of spiritual identity is particularly sneaky because it seems so positive. You might pride yourself on being someone who meditates, someone who understands Buddhist teachings, someone who doesn't get caught up in material things. But the moment you're attached to being spiritual, you're just trading one form of ego for another. You become invested in maintaining your image as someone who has transcended ordinary concerns, which creates a new set of concerns about maintaining that image. Buddhist wisdom invites you to hold even your self-concepts lightly. Yes, you might be a parent, but that's not all you are. Yes, you might be successful in some areas, but you don't need to be successful in every area to be worthy of respect. Yes, you might have spiritual interests, but you don't need to be perfectly peaceful to benefit from wisdom teachings. When you stop defending rigid ideas about who you are, you become free to respond authentically to each moment. This practice becomes especially important in our current cultural moment, where social media and personal branding encourage us to create and maintain very specific identities. The pressure to present a consistent, successful, impressive version of yourself online can trap you in constantly defending an image that may have very little to do with your actual daily experience. The practice of letting go of fixed self-concepts doesn't mean becoming passive or losing your sense of direction. It means becoming fluid enough to grow, change, and respond appropriately to different situations without feeling like your core identity is under threat. It means being comfortable with not knowing exactly who you are, because you're discovering yourself fresh in each moment. Now let me share the story that illustrates the ultimate freedom that comes from this practice. There was once a man who had achieved remarkable success in the business world. He owned multiple properties, expensive cars, and had substantial wealth accumulated in various accounts. By every external measure, he had achieved the kind of power and security that most people spend their entire lives pursuing. But despite all his external success, this man felt a deep sense of emptiness. Something was missing from his life that no amount of acquisition seemed able to fill. The more he accumulated, the more he felt the weight of managing and protecting everything he had accumulated. His wealth, instead of providing freedom, had become a complex system that required constant attention and created constant anxiety. So he made a decision that most people would consider crazy. He gave away his wealth, left his luxurious lifestyle, and chose to live as simply as possible. He wanted to discover what life would feel like without the burden of ownership, without the constant background worry about things that could be lost, stolen, or damaged. One day, while sitting quietly in meditation, this man experienced such profound joy that he couldn't contain himself. He called out loud, "Oh, what happiness! What incredible happiness!" His exclamation was so enthusiastic that it disturbed others who were also meditating nearby. People were concerned, thinking perhaps he had lost his mind or was having some kind of emotional breakdown. How could someone who had given up everything be so ecstatically happy? When they asked him to explain his outburst, his answer revealed something profound about the nature of true wealth. He said, "For the first time in my life, I own nothing that can be lost, stolen, or taken away from me. No house that needs maintenance, no car that needs repairs, no bank account that needs monitoring, no possessions that need protecting. No bills to pay, no insurance premiums to worry about, no security systems to maintain." For the first time, he felt truly wealthy. Wealthy in freedom, wealthy in peace, wealthy in the ability to be completely present without the constant background anxiety about things. This story isn't suggesting that you should give away all your possessions or abandon your responsibilities. It's pointing to a different relationship with ownership, one where you can use what you need without being enslaved by it. The man in the story didn't find happiness in poverty. He found happiness in freedom from the mental burden of constantly managing, protecting, and worrying about things. Think about your own relationship with your possessions for a moment. How much mental energy do you spend thinking about things, wanting them, organizing them, maintaining them, protecting them, upgrading them? How much of your sense of security depends on having the right stuff? How much of your identity is wrapped up in what you own, where you live, what you drive, what brands you choose? The practice of cutting off and letting go invites you to experiment with holding all of this more lightly. Not throwing everything away, but questioning whether you really need to carry the mental weight of ownership so heavily. Can you enjoy your home without constantly comparing it to other homes? Can you use your car without it becoming a statement about who you are? Can you appreciate what you have without it becoming the foundation of your self-worth? This same principle applies to your thoughts and emotions. Most people treat their thoughts as if they own them and their emotions as if they define them. I am anxious instead of I notice anxiety arising. I am angry instead of I notice anger moving through me. I think this situation is terrible instead of I notice my mind having thoughts about this situation. When you can observe your mental and emotional experiences without claiming ownership of them, something remarkable happens. You're no longer trapped by every passing mood or convinced by every worried thought. You have space to choose how to respond, rather than being automatically controlled by whatever mental weather happens to be passing through. This is what Buddhist teachers mean when they talk about equanimity, not emotional numbness, but the ability to remain stable and responsive, regardless of changing circumstances. You can feel sadness without being destroyed by it. You can experience anger without being consumed by it. You can have worried thoughts without believing they're accurate predictions about the future. The practice of letting go also extends to your roles and relationships. You might be a parent, but you can practice what some teachers call non-parenting, caring deeply for your child while not being attached to specific outcomes or controlling their every experience. You might be in a romantic relationship, but you can love someone fully while not needing them to be different than they are. You might be an employee or boss, but you can engage fully with your work while not letting your job performance define your worth as a person. This doesn't mean becoming detached or uncaring. It means caring so deeply that you're willing to let the people in your life be themselves, rather than demanding they fulfill your expectations of who they should be. It means engaging so fully with your responsibilities that you can respond to what's actually needed rather than just defending your position or maintaining your image. The power of cutting off and letting go ultimately gives you access to what Buddhist teaching calls your ordinary mind, the capacity to be completely present and responsive to whatever is actually happening, without the layer of mental commentary, resistance, or grasping that usually colors every experience. In this state, washing dishes becomes as satisfying as any entertainment, having a difficult conversation becomes as peaceful as meditation, and dealing with challenges becomes as spacious as any retreat. This isn't about becoming perfect or eliminating all preferences and desires. It's about holding everything lightly enough that nothing can destroy your fundamental peace. You can still have goals, but you're not enslaved by the need to achieve them. You can still have preferences, but you're not upset when reality doesn't match them. You can still care deeply about people and causes, but you're not destroyed when things don't go the way you hoped. The practice develops gradually, like learning to hold water in your hands. At first, you grip tightly, and the water slips through your fingers. But as you learn to cup your hands gently, to hold without grasping, the water stays exactly where it needs to be. This is how you learn to hold your entire life, gently, lovingly, but without the tight grip that creates suffering. There's a way of understanding yourself that will completely change how you navigate daily life, and it begins with imagining that you are like a tree. Not in some mystical or metaphorical sense, but in the most practical way possible. Every tree is shaped by two fundamental forces: what it inherited from its seed and what it encounters in its environment. You are exactly the same. Right now, as you're listening to this, you're carrying forward the gifts and challenges that came through your family line. Your parents gave you more than just physical characteristics. They passed along ways of thinking, emotional patterns, and approaches to life that you might not even recognize as inherited. Simultaneously, you're being shaped by your current environment, the people you interact with, the information you consume, the places you spend time, the activities that fill your days. Buddhist wisdom recognizes that understanding this interplay between your inherited nature and your current environment is essential for finding peace and making wise choices. Without this understanding, you often feel like a victim of circumstances, pushed around by moods and reactions you can't control. But when you see clearly how you're being influenced and how you're influencing others, you can start making conscious choices about the kind of person you want to become. In Buddhist teaching, what you inherited is called your individual retribution. Though that might sound like a harsh term, It simply means the specific combination of traits, tendencies, and characteristics that were passed down to you through your ancestry. This includes obvious things like your physical features, but it goes much deeper. You inherited emotional patterns from your parents, ways of processing stress from your grandparents, and even survival strategies that your ancestors developed to navigate their particular challenges. Consider how this inheritance shows up in unexpected ways. Maybe you find yourself humming the same songs your grandmother used to sing, even though you haven't heard them in years. Perhaps you notice that your hands move in the same gestures your father used when he was explaining something important. Or you might discover that your approach to solving problems mirrors your mother's way of thinking through challenges, even when you thought you were doing something completely original. Let me share what happened in that French monastery during one of their summer retreats that perfectly illustrates this. At lunch, they asked each person to share one habit they'd inherited from their mother and one habit they'd inherited from their father. The first person to share got so excited that they listed several habits from each parent, even though they'd only been asked for one. What emerged was both funny and profound. One person realized they had their mother's tendency to make friends with strangers everywhere they went, something that had embarrassed them as a child, but that they now appreciated as a gift. Another noticed they had their father's creative problem-solving approach, always finding unusual solutions to practical challenges. Someone else recognized their grandmother's way of moving through the world with quiet dignity, a quality they'd absorbed without even realizing it. The teacher who was leading this exercise had his own story to share. He recognized in himself his mother's social nature, her ability to treat strangers like old friends, which had mortified him as a child but which he now saw as a beautiful gift of openness. From his father, he'd inherited a creative spirit that showed up in everything from cooking to mending clothes, connecting him to his ancestors in ways that brought him joy rather than burden. But the inheritance goes beyond individual traits, to include deeper patterns of how your family line has learned to navigate the world. If your ancestors survived by being very cautious and alert to danger, you might find yourself naturally scanning for potential problems, even in safe situations. If your family line learned to thrive through generosity and community building, you might find yourself naturally looking for ways to help and connect with others. These inherited strategies aren't right or wrong. They're simply the wisdom your family developed to survive and flourish in their particular circumstances. Here's what's beautiful about this understanding. Once you recognize these inherited patterns, you can start to appreciate them instead of fighting them. You begin to see that the qualities you sometimes struggle with, maybe your tendency to worry like your mother, or your stubbornness like your father, are actually expressions of deeper strengths that got passed down to you. The worry might be inherited sensitivity and caring. The stubbornness might be inherited determination and persistence. This recognition can be profoundly healing, especially if you've spent years trying to be completely different from your family. You might discover that the very qualities you've been rejecting about yourself are actually gifts that just need to be understood and channeled wisely. When you stop fighting your inherited nature and start working with it skillfully, you often find that your greatest strengths emerge from the same source as your biggest challenges. But your inherited nature is only half the story. Buddhist teaching calls the other half your environmental retribution, the ongoing influence of everything around you. Like a tree that grows differently depending on whether it's in a forest or a field, whether it gets morning sun or afternoon shade, you're constantly being shaped by your environment. And here's what's remarkable. You have more control over your environment than you might think. The tree metaphor becomes especially helpful when you consider how trees interact with their surroundings. A tree doesn't just passively receive what the environment gives it, it actively participates in creating the conditions it needs to thrive. Trees release chemicals that communicate with other trees. They drop leaves that enrich the soil. They provide shelter that creates microclimates for other plants and animals. You interact with your environment in similar ways, constantly taking in influences and putting out responses that shape what comes back to you. Buddhist teaching recognizes that you interact with your environment in very specific ways, and becoming aware of these interactions gives you tremendous power to shape your own experience. Think of it like this. You're constantly taking in information from your surroundings, processing it through your inherited patterns, and then putting out responses that affect your environment, which then affects how your environment responds back to you. It's a continuous loop of influence, and you can learn to work with it consciously. The way you take in information from your environment happens through what Buddhist psychology calls the 4 nutriments. Just like your body needs food to survive, your mind needs certain types of nourishment to thrive. But unlike physical food, these mental nutriments are constantly available, and you're consuming them whether you're aware of it or not. The question isn't whether you're taking in mental nourishment, it's whether you're choosing nourishment that helps you grow in the direction you want to go. The first nutriment is edible food, everything you consume through your mouth. This isn't just about nutrition in the physical sense, though that matters enormously for your mental state. When you're well nourished physically, your inherited emotional patterns tend to be more balanced and manageable. When you're depleted or overstimulated by substances, those same patterns can become exaggerated and reactive. It's about recognizing that what you put into your body affects your emotional stability, your ability to concentrate, and your capacity to respond wisely to challenging situations. But this nutriment also includes the more subtle things you consume through conversation and interaction. The words people speak to you, the emotional energy they share, the attitudes they express, all of this becomes part of your mental diet. If you spend your days surrounded by complaint and criticism, that becomes part of what nourishes your consciousness. If you spend time with people who express gratitude and curiosity, that becomes part of your mental nourishment instead. Think about how different you feel after spending time with someone who is constantly negative versus someone who approaches life with appreciation and wonder. The second nutriment is sensory impressions. Everything you see, hear, smell, taste, and touch throughout your day. This includes the obvious things like the TV shows you watch, the music you listen to, the conversations you overhear. But it also includes subtler influences like the lighting in your home, the pace of your neighborhood, the energy of the people around you. Your nervous system is constantly absorbing these impressions and using them to determine whether you're safe whether you should be alert or relaxed, whether the world is a friendly or threatening place. Here's where it gets interesting, and where you can see how profoundly your environment shapes your inner experience. Most people don't realize how much their daily mood and mental state are influenced by the sensory environment they're choosing to spend time in. You might think you're just watching the news to stay informed, but your nervous system is absorbing images of conflict and crisis and interpreting them as immediate threats to your safety. You might think you're just scrolling through social media to stay connected, but your mind is constantly comparing your inner experience to others' outer presentations and finding yourself lacking. One teacher shared a perfect example of how this works in our modern technological environment. He was trying to fix a broken telescope in the monastery's storage room, so he went online to find instructions for realigning it. He found a helpful video that showed him exactly how to adjust the telescope for a better view of the moon. But the next day, when he went online for something else entirely, he was shocked to discover that telescope advertisements had suddenly appeared everywhere he looked. He tried different browsers, different search engines, but the telescope ads followed him across the internet. This was his first direct experience of how sophisticated our information environment has become at tracking and influencing our attention. Fortunately, as someone who had chosen a simple lifestyle without credit cards or disposable income, he was protected from acting on these targeted suggestions. But it made him realize how vulnerable most people are to having their desires shaped by forces they don't even recognize. This example illustrates something crucial about the sensory nutriment in our modern world. The information environment we're swimming in is designed to capture and direct our attention in ways that serve commercial interests rather than our well-being. Every click, every pause, every scroll is being analyzed to understand what will keep us engaged and consuming. If you're not conscious of this dynamic, you can find yourself being fed a mental diet that increases craving, anxiety, and dissatisfaction without ever understanding why you feel so restless. This is particularly important for parents to understand, because children are even more vulnerable to these influences than adults. Their minds are still developing the capacity to distinguish between authentic needs and artificially generated desires. When children are exposed to sophisticated marketing techniques through games, videos, and social media, they're being trained to focus their attention on what they don't have rather than appreciating what they do have. The consequences show up not just in their behavior, but in their fundamental relationship with contentment and satisfaction. The third nutriment is volition, the conscious and unconscious intentions that drive your choices. This is perhaps the most powerful nutriment because it shapes not just what you do, but how you interpret everything that happens to you. When your underlying intention is to prove yourself, defend yourself, or get approval from others, you'll interpret neutral situations as threatening and neutral feedback as criticism. When your underlying intention is to be helpful, to learn, or to find peace, you'll interpret the same situations as opportunities for growth and connection. Most people carry multiple intentions at once, and they're not always conscious of what they are. You might consciously intend to be a good parent, while unconsciously intending to prove that you're better than your own parents were. You might consciously intend to be successful, while unconsciously intending to avoid any possibility of failure. These conflicting intentions create internal tension and make it difficult to respond clearly to situations. What's fascinating is how your deepest intentions actually shape what you notice in your environment. If your unconscious intention is to find evidence that the world is dangerous, you'll naturally notice all the threatening things around you while filtering out signs of safety and kindness. If your unconscious intention is to find evidence that you're not good enough, you'll notice every criticism and miss every compliment. Your intentions work like a lens that determines what you see and what remains invisible to you. The fourth nutriment is consciousness itself, both your individual awareness and the collective awareness of the groups you belong to. This is the most subtle nutriment, but it might be the most influential. You're constantly absorbing the unspoken beliefs, values, and assumptions of the people around you. If you spend time with people who assume the world is dangerous, you'll start to see danger everywhere. If you spend time with people who assume growth and learning are always possible, you'll start to see opportunities everywhere. This is why Buddhist teaching emphasizes the importance of Sangha, community that supports your growth toward wisdom and compassion. It's not just about having nice people to spend time with. It's about surrounding yourself with consciousness that nourishes the qualities you want to develop. When you're around people who are practicing patience, kindness, and wisdom, these qualities become more accessible to you. When you're around people who are habitually reactive, critical, or fearful, these patterns become more activated in you. Now, here's the part that gives you real power in this process. Just as you're constantly taking in nourishment from your environment, you're also constantly putting out energy that affects your environment. Buddhist teaching recognizes three primary ways you influence your surroundings: through your thoughts, your speech, and your bodily actions. And here's what's remarkable. You have conscious control over all three of these, even when you don't have control over what's happening around you. Your thoughts might seem private, but they're actually a form of energy that affects everyone around you. This isn't mystical thinking. It's recognizable in your daily experience. When you're thinking critical thoughts about the people you're with, they sense it, even if you don't say anything. When you're thinking appreciative thoughts about someone, they feel that too. When you're thinking worried thoughts about your future, you're contributing to an atmosphere of anxiety. When you're thinking peaceful thoughts about the present moment, you're contributing to an atmosphere of calm. This doesn't mean you have to monitor every thought or try to think only positive things. That would be another form of struggle and control. It means recognizing that your mental state is constantly contributing to the collective energy of whatever situation you're in. When you're aware of this, you can start choosing thoughts that are helpful rather than harmful, not just for yourself, but for everyone around you. Your speech, of course, has obvious power to influence your environment. But most people don't realize how much their casual conversation shapes the mental atmosphere of their homes, workplaces, and communities. When you habitually speak about what's wrong, what's missing, what's threatening, you're training everyone around you to focus on problems and dangers. When you habitually speak about what's working, what's possible, what's beautiful, you're training everyone around you to notice opportunities and gifts. This isn't about being artificially positive or ignoring real problems. It's about recognizing that your words have power to direct attention, and attention shapes experience. You can acknowledge difficulties while still orienting towards solutions. You can express concerns while still maintaining hope. You can be honest about challenges while still appreciating what's working. Your bodily actions obviously have the most direct impact on your environment. But Buddhist understanding of action goes deeper than just what you do. It includes the energy and intention behind what you do. You can wash dishes with resentment or with appreciation, and the same physical action will have completely different effects on your mental state and on the atmosphere around you. You can listen to someone with the intention of finding flaws in their thinking or with the intention of understanding their perspective, and the same physical behavior will create completely different results. This is where the tree metaphor becomes really practical. Just as a tree grows toward light and sends its roots toward water, you can consciously orient yourself toward the kinds of nourishment that help you develop your best qualities. And just as a tree provides oxygen and shade for other living things, you can consciously contribute to an environment that supports the growth of everyone around you. But here's what makes this approach different from typical self-improvement advice. You're not trying to become someone completely different from who you are. You're learning to work skillfully with your inherited nature while creating conditions that bring out your best qualities. A pine tree doesn't try to become an oak tree. It learns to be the healthiest, most beautiful pine tree it can be in whatever environment it finds itself. This understanding becomes especially important when you realize that you and the people in your life are constantly shaping each other. Your family members, friends, colleagues, and neighbors are all part of your environment, and you're part of theirs. The way you show up affects how they show up, which affects how you show up, in an endless cycle of mutual influence. When you recognize this interconnectedness, you start to see that taking care of your own mental state isn't selfish. It's actually a service to everyone around you. When you're peaceful, you make it easier for others to be peaceful. When you're patient, you make it easier for others to be patient. When you're present, you make it easier for others to be present. Your inner work becomes a gift to your community. Let me give you a contemporary example of how this works. Imagine you're in a meeting at work and someone starts complaining about a policy change. You have several options for how to respond, and each one will influence the direction of the conversation and the energy of the group. You could join the complaining, which would likely escalate the negative energy and make everyone feel more frustrated and powerless. You could argue with the complainer, which would likely create conflict and make the meeting uncomfortable for everyone. You could ignore the complaining, which might feel personally peaceful but doesn't really help the situation. Or you could practice what Buddhist teaching calls skillful response, acknowledging the person's concerns while gently redirecting toward what's possible. I hear that this change feels challenging. What do you think would be the most helpful way to adapt to it? This kind of response doesn't ignore the problem, but it orients the group towards solutions rather than getting stuck in complaints. The remarkable thing is that this kind of skillful response often completely changes the energy of a group. People start problem solving instead of just venting. They start feeling empowered instead of victimized. They start looking for opportunities instead of just focusing on obstacles. Your way of responding becomes a kind of environmental conditioning that brings out everyone's better qualities. This works in family situations too. When your teenager comes home from school in a bad mood, you can respond in ways that escalate the negative energy, or in ways that create space for something different to emerge. If you immediately start asking questions or trying to solve their problems, you might increase their resistance. If you ignore their mood completely, you might miss an opportunity for connection. But if you can simply be present with them without needing to change or fix anything, you create an environment where they can process their experience and find their own balance. The same principle applies to your relationship with yourself. When you're in a difficult mood or dealing with a challenging situation, you can respond to yourself in ways that make things worse, or in ways that create space for wisdom to emerge. If you immediately start judging your mood or trying to force yourself to feel different, you create internal conflict. If you ignore your experience completely, you miss valuable information about what you might need. But if you can be present with your experience, without immediately needing to change it, you create internal conditions where natural wisdom can arise. This is what Buddhist teaching means when it talks about mindfulness of inner and outer experience. You're paying attention to what's happening inside you, your thoughts, emotions, physical sensations, and reactions. At the same time, you're paying attention to what's happening around you, the energy of other people, the demands of your environment, the opportunities and challenges that are presenting themselves. With this dual awareness, you can start making conscious choices about how to respond rather than just reacting automatically. But here's where it gets really interesting. Buddhist psychology recognizes that your individual consciousness is always in relationship with collective consciousness. You're not just an isolated individual trying to manage your own experience. You're part of larger systems, your family system, your work system, your community system, your cultural system. Each of these systems has its own patterns, beliefs, and ways of operating, and you're constantly influenced by them and influencing them. This is why personal transformation is never just personal. When you change your patterns of thinking, feeling, and responding, you're also changing the patterns of every system you're part of. When you become more peaceful, you're contributing to the peace of your family, your workplace, your community. When you become more wise, you're contributing to the wisdom of all the groups you belong to. Sometimes this influence is obvious. When you stop engaging in family drama, the family drama often diminishes. Sometimes it's subtle. When you start approaching your work with more creativity and less stress, your colleagues might find themselves feeling more creative and less stressed without knowing why. But the influence is always there, rippling out through the interconnected web of relationships that make up your life. This understanding can be both inspiring and overwhelming. Inspiring because it means that your personal growth work is always contributing to the healing of the world. Overwhelming because it can feel like you're responsible for everyone else's experience. The key is to remember that you're responsible for your own contribution to the collective consciousness, not for controlling how others respond to that contribution. You can be a source of peace without needing everyone around you to be peaceful. You can be a source of wisdom without needing everyone to make wise choices. You can be a source of compassion without needing everyone to be compassionate. Your job is to contribute your best qualities to the collective consciousness and trust that this contribution makes a difference, even when you can't see the results immediately. This is where the tree metaphor becomes especially helpful. A tree doesn't worry about whether other trees are growing properly or producing enough oxygen. It just focuses on its own growth, on sinking its roots deep and reaching toward the light. In doing so, it naturally contributes to the health of the entire forest. You can approach your life the same way, focusing on your own growth, while trusting that this growth serves the well-being of everyone around you. The practical application of this understanding is profound. Instead of trying to control your environment or change other people, you focus on creating the internal conditions that allow your best qualities to emerge. Instead of waiting for external circumstances to be perfect before you can be peaceful, you cultivate peace as a way of contributing to better external circumstances. Instead of seeing yourself as separate from your surroundings, you recognize that you and your environment are constantly co-creating each other. This shift in perspective can transform how you approach everything: your work, your relationships, your challenges, your daily routines. You start seeing every interaction as an opportunity to practice contributing positive energy to the collective consciousness. You start seeing every difficult situation as an opportunity to practice responding with wisdom, rather than just reacting with your inherited patterns. You start seeing every moment as an opportunity to be the kind of person who makes the world a little bit better just by being present. And here's the beautiful paradox. When you stop trying to force your environment to be different and start focusing on being the kind of person who naturally creates positive change, your environment often does become more peaceful, more supportive, more aligned with your deepest values. Not because you're controlling it, but because you're contributing to it in a way that brings out the best in everyone around you. Once you understand that you're constantly both absorbing nourishment from your environment and contributing to the environment that others experience, a profound responsibility emerges. You begin to realize that every space you enter, every conversation you participate in, every online interaction you engage with becomes an opportunity to either add to the collective stress and confusion of the world, or to contribute to its peace and clarity. This isn't a burden. It's actually one of the most empowering discoveries you can make about your daily life. Most people go through their days thinking that the environments they encounter are simply given conditions they have to adapt to. Your workplace has a certain energy. Your family has particular dynamics. Your neighborhood operates according to established patterns. But Buddhist wisdom reveals something different, that you're actively participating in creating these environments every moment, whether you're aware of it or not. The question isn't whether you're influencing your surroundings, but whether you're doing so consciously and skillfully. Think about the last time you walked into a room where people were arguing. You probably felt the tension immediately, even before you understood what the conflict was about. Your nervous system picked up the agitated energy and began preparing you to either join the fight, flee from it, or try to mediate it. Now think about the last time you walked into a space where people were genuinely enjoying each other's company, perhaps sharing a meal, working together on something meaningful, or simply sitting quietly together. Your nervous system recognized that peaceful energy just as quickly and began helping you relax into it. What you might not have realized is that in both situations, your presence immediately began influencing the energy of the room. If you entered the argumentative space with your own anxiety and reactivity, you likely amplified the conflict. If you entered with calm curiosity, you might have helped de-escalate the tension without saying a word. If you entered the peaceful space with appreciation and presence, you contributed to the sense of well-being everyone was sharing. If you entered distracted or stressed about something else, you slightly diminished the collective sense of ease. This dynamic operates constantly, in ways both obvious and subtle. When you're the first person to arrive at work in the morning, the energy you bring sets a tone that ripples through everyone who arrives after you. When you're driving in traffic, your internal state contributes to the collective energy of hundreds of other drivers around you. When you're scrolling through social media, your attention and responses become part of the vast network of consciousness that shapes what kind of content gets amplified and what kind gets ignored. In our modern world, this responsibility has become both more important and more complex than ever before. The environments we participate in now extend far beyond our physical locations. Through technology, we're simultaneously part of multiple environments: our immediate physical space, our online communities, our social media networks, our digital workplaces. Each of these environments is being shaped by the consciousness and intentions of everyone participating in it, often in ways that nobody fully understands or controls. Consider how this plays out in the digital realm. Every time you engage with content online, whether you like, share, comment, or simply spend time reading something, you're sending signals about what kind of information should be prioritized and promoted. If you consistently engage with content that promotes outrage, fear, or divisiveness, you're unconsciously training the algorithms to show you and others more of that type of content. If you consistently engage with content that promotes understanding, beauty, or practical wisdom, you're training the systems to amplify those qualities instead. Most people don't realize how much their individual choices about what to pay attention to online are actually shaping the collective information environment that everyone experiences. When millions of people choose to click on headlines that promise to make them angry or afraid, they're collectively creating an information ecosystem that prioritizes anger and fear. When people choose to engage with content that helps them learn, grow, or connect with others in meaningful ways, They're contributing to an information ecosystem that supports wisdom and community. This brings us to one of the most pressing challenges of our time: how to maintain mental and spiritual health in an information environment that often seems designed to undermine both. The same technologies that connect us across vast distances and give us access to incredible knowledge also expose us to levels of stimulation, manipulation, and artificial urgency that no human nervous system evolved to handle. Learning to navigate this landscape skillfully isn't just important for your personal well-being, it's essential for the health of our collective consciousness. Let me share a story that perfectly illustrates how sophisticated these technological influences have become. A teacher at the monastery was trying to fix a broken telescope in their storage room, so he went online to find instructions for realigning it. He found a helpful video that showed him exactly how to adjust the telescope for a better view of the blood moon that was coming. The repair was successful, and he was able to share the celestial event with the community that evening. But the next day, when he went online for something else entirely, he was shocked to discover that telescope advertisements had suddenly appeared everywhere he looked. He tried different browsers, different search engines, even different devices, but the telescope ads followed him across the internet like digital shadows. This was his first direct experience of how sophisticated our information environment has become at tracking and influencing our desires and attention. Fortunately, as someone who had chosen a simple lifestyle without credit cards or disposable income, he was protected from acting on these targeted suggestions. But it made him realize how vulnerable most people are to having their wants and needs shaped by forces they don't even recognize. The implications were particularly concerning when he considered how children and young people, whose decision-making capacities are still developing, are constantly exposed to these sophisticated influence systems. This example illustrates something crucial about the sensory nutriment in our modern world. The information environment we're swimming in is designed to capture and direct our attention in ways that serve commercial interests rather than our well-being. Every click, every pause, every scroll is being analyzed to understand what will keep us engaged and consuming. If you're not conscious of this dynamic, you can find yourself being fed a mental diet that increases craving, anxiety, and dissatisfaction without ever understanding why you feel so restless. Buddhist teaching offers profound guidance for this challenge through its understanding of what nourishes consciousness and what depletes it. When you're conscious about the information diet you're consuming, you begin to notice how different types of content affect your mental state, your emotional balance, and your capacity for wise response. You start to distinguish between information that actually serves your life and information that simply captures your attention without providing any real benefit. This discernment becomes especially important when you consider how the modern media landscape is structured. Most commercial media platforms are designed to maximize engagement rather than to promote well-being or wisdom. They profit by keeping your attention as long as possible, regardless of whether that sustained attention is actually beneficial for you. Content that provokes strong emotional reactions, outrage, fear, envy, or excitement tends to be more engaging than content that promotes calm reflection or genuine understanding. The result is an information environment that systematically amplifies our most reactive impulses, while rarely feeding our deeper needs for connection, meaning, and peace. This isn't necessarily the conscious intention of the people creating these platforms, but it's the inevitable result of systems designed to capture and monetize attention without considering the broader consequences for human consciousness. Understanding this dynamic gives you the power to make more conscious choices about how you engage with information technology. But the solution isn't simply to withdraw from all digital environments. Technology itself is neutral. It amplifies whatever consciousness we bring to it. When used mindfully, digital tools can connect you with wisdom teachers across the globe, help you find communities of people who share your deepest values, and give you access to information that genuinely supports your growth and service. The key is developing the discernment to distinguish between technology use that nourishes your best qualities and technology use that feeds your mental afflictions. This discernment extends to the physical environments you choose to spend time in as well. Buddhist wisdom recognizes that different environments naturally cultivate different mental states. Spaces that are cluttered, noisy, or chaotic tend to promote restlessness and distraction. Spaces that are clean, quiet, and thoughtfully arranged tend to promote clarity and calm. Natural environments, forests, gardens, bodies of water, often help restore a sense of perspective and connection that can be difficult to maintain in purely human-made spaces. This doesn't mean you need to live in a monastery or retreat center to practice wisely. It means recognizing that you have more influence over your physical environment than you might think, and that small changes in your surroundings can have significant effects on your mental state and spiritual development. Creating a corner of your home that feels peaceful and uncluttered, choosing to spend time in natural settings when possible, being mindful about the visual and auditory stimulation in your daily environment, these practices can profoundly support your capacity for wisdom and compassion. The monastery where these teachings originated exemplifies this principle beautifully. Rather than creating an elaborate or luxurious environment, they focused on simplicity and natural beauty. There are no swimming pools with slides, no entertainment centers, no attractions designed to stimulate excitement or pleasure. Instead, there are quiet walking paths, simple gardens, and spaces designed for contemplation and genuine human connection. The environment itself teaches visitors that peace doesn't require constant stimulation or elaborate external conditions. It emerges naturally when we create space for it. This approach challenges our culture's assumption that more options and more entertainment lead to greater happiness. Many visitors initially feel bored or restless in such a simple environment, having become accustomed to constant digital stimulation and busy schedules. But as they adjust to the slower pace and reduced sensory input, they often discover a quality of contentment and presence that they'd forgotten was possible. They learn that the absence of distraction isn't emptiness, it's spaciousness for authentic experience and genuine connection. The responsibility for creating nourishing environments becomes even more significant when you consider your role in other people's lives. As a parent, partner, friend, colleague, or community member, you're constantly contributing to the environments that shape other people's consciousness and well-being. The words you speak, the energy you bring to interactions, the examples you set through your choices, all of these become part of the nutriment that others are absorbing. This is particularly important in family life, where the environmental influences are so constant and intimate. Children are especially sensitive to the emotional and mental atmosphere of their homes. They absorb not just what their parents say directly to them, but the quality of energy that pervades their daily environment. If home is a place where people speak kindly to each other, approach problems with curiosity rather than reactivity, and take time to appreciate simple pleasures, children learn that these ways of being are normal and possible. If home is a place dominated by stress, criticism, or emotional volatility, children often internalize these patterns as their baseline expectations for how life works. Consider how differently children develop when they grow up in families that practice what Buddhist teaching calls loving speech, versus families where harsh words and criticism are common. In environments where people listen to each other with genuine interest, children learn that their thoughts and feelings matter, and that communication can be a source of connection rather than conflict. In environments where people regularly express gratitude and appreciation, children develop the capacity to notice beauty and goodness in their daily experience. In environments where mistakes are treated as learning opportunities rather than failures, children develop resilience and the willingness to take healthy risks. But this influence operates in all relationships, not just with children. When you consistently approach your interactions with colleagues from a place of genuine interest in their well-being and success, you're contributing to a workplace culture that supports everyone's flourishing. When you habitually respond to your friends' challenges with empathy and practical wisdom, rather than judgment or advice giving, you're helping create relationships where people feel safe to be authentic and vulnerable. When you treat service workers, neighbors, and strangers with basic respect and kindness, you're contributing to a social environment where everyone's dignity is recognized. The cumulative effect of these individual choices about how to show up in relationships is enormous. Every family that prioritizes kindness and understanding over being right makes it a little easier for other families to do the same. Every workplace where people approach conflicts with curiosity and good faith makes it more likely that other workplaces will develop similar cultures. Every community where differences of opinion are treated as opportunities for learning rather than threats to be eliminated creates space for other communities to embrace that same openness. This is how social transformation actually happens, not through top-down mandates or dramatic gestures, but through countless individuals choosing to embody the qualities they want to see more of in the world. Buddhist teaching calls this practicing for the benefit of all beings, and it recognizes that your personal spiritual development is inseparable from your contribution to collective healing. But creating nourishing environments isn't just about being nice or positive. It requires genuine wisdom about what actually supports human flourishing versus what merely makes people feel comfortable in the short term. Sometimes creating a truly nourishing environment means having difficult conversations, setting clear boundaries, or refusing to participate in dynamics that harm everyone involved. Sometimes it means disrupting patterns of avoidance or people-pleasing that prevent real growth and healing from occurring. The key is learning to distinguish between compassionate firmness and reactive aggression, between wise boundaries and selfish withdrawal, between beneficial disruption and destructive chaos. This discernment develops through practice, through repeatedly choosing to respond from your deepest wisdom rather than your immediate impulses, and then paying attention to the long-term effects of those choices. One of the most powerful ways to create nourishing environments is to embody what Buddhist teaching calls non-reactive presence. This means developing the capacity to remain calm and responsive in situations where others are upset, defensive, or aggressive. Not by suppressing your own feelings or becoming emotionally numb, but by staying connected to your deeper intentions for the well-being of everyone involved. When you can maintain this kind of presence, you become what some teachers call a non-anxious presence in any group or relationship you're part of. People sense that they don't have to manage your emotional reactions, which gives them more space to process their own experiences honestly. They feel safer to be vulnerable, to admit mistakes, to ask for help, to express needs that might be inconvenient for others. This safety allows for the kind of authentic communication and genuine problem-solving that creates truly nourishing relationships and communities. Developing this capacity for non-reactive presence is one of the most practical gifts you can give to your family, your workplace, and your community. It doesn't require any special training or credentials, just the willingness to practice staying connected to your compassionate intentions, even when situations become challenging. Every time you choose to respond to someone's anger with curiosity about what they're really needing, every time you meet someone's defensiveness with patience rather than counterattack, every time you stay present with someone's pain without trying to fix it immediately, you're creating an environment where healing and growth become possible. This practice becomes especially important in our current cultural moment, where polarization and reactivity seem to dominate so many public conversations. The quality of consciousness that most people bring to discussions about important issues often makes those discussions less productive rather than more productive. People approach conversations about politics, social issues, or cultural differences with the intention of proving their point rather than understanding other perspectives. They listen for opportunities to argue rather than opportunities to learn. The result is that even when people agree on many fundamental values, they often end up feeling more divided and alienated from each other. Creating nourishing environments for important conversations requires a different approach, one that prioritizes understanding over being understood, curiosity over certainty, and collaborative problem-solving over competitive debate. This doesn't mean abandoning your values or avoiding difficult topics. It means bringing the same quality of care and attention to how you engage with differences that you would bring to any other important practice in your life. When you can model this kind of engaged, non-reactive dialogue, you make it easier for others to do the same. People often mirror the energy they encounter in conversations. If you approach them with defensive argumentation, they're likely to become defensive in return. If you approach them with genuine curiosity about their perspective, they're more likely to become curious about yours. If you can stay connected to your care for their well-being, even when you disagree with their positions, they're more likely to stay connected to their care for yours. This principle applies not just to formal political discussions, but to all the small disagreements and differences of opinion that arise in daily life. How you handle conflicts about family finances, workplace policies, parenting decisions, or neighborhood issues becomes practice for engaging skillfully with larger social challenges. Every time you choose collaboration over competition, understanding over judgment, creative problem-solving over rigid position-taking, you're strengthening your capacity to contribute to healing in the broader world. The environments you create also extend to the future through the patterns you establish and the examples you set. Children who grow up in families where conflicts are approached with respect and creativity learn that disagreement doesn't have to mean disconnection. Employees who work in organizations where people support each other's growth and success learn that collaboration is more effective than competition. Community members who participate in groups where differences are seen as resources rather than threats learn that diversity actually strengthens collective wisdom and resilience. These learned patterns then get carried forward into new relationships, new organizations, and new communities, slowly shifting the baseline expectations for how people can treat each other. This is how cultural healing happens, not through dramatic interventions, but through the gradual spread of healthier patterns of interaction from person to person, family to family, community to community. But perhaps the most fundamental environment you're responsible for creating is your own internal environment, the quality of consciousness you maintain, regardless of external circumstances. This internal environment determines how you interpret events, what possibilities you're able to see in challenging situations, and what resources you have available for responding wisely when life doesn't go according to plan. Buddhist practice offers specific tools for cultivating internal environments that support wisdom and compassion. Regular meditation creates spaces of calm and clarity in your consciousness. Mindful attention to your thoughts and emotions helps you recognize patterns before they become overwhelming. Practices of gratitude and appreciation train your mind to notice beauty and goodness even in difficult circumstances. Study of wisdom teachings provides perspectives that can help you navigate challenges with greater skillfulness. These practices aren't just beneficial for your personal well-being, they're also gifts you give to everyone whose life intersects with yours. When you've cultivated internal stability and clarity, you're more available to support others during their difficult times. When you've developed the capacity to find peace in challenging circumstances, you can help others discover that same capacity in themselves. When you've learnt to respond to problems with creativity and resourcefulness, rather than panic or despair, you inspire others to approach their challenges with similar confidence. The responsibility for creating nourishing environments ultimately comes down to this: recognizing that every moment offers you a choice about what kind of energy you're contributing to the world. You can contribute anxiety or calm, criticism or appreciation, reactivity or wisdom, disconnection or compassion. These aren't just personal choices with personal consequences. They're choices that ripple out through every relationship and community you're part of, shaping the kind of world that future generations will inherit. This might sound overwhelming, but it's actually profoundly hopeful. It means that you always have meaningful work to do, regardless of your circumstances or position in life. You always have the opportunity to make a positive difference, even if it's just through the quality of presence you bring to ordinary interactions. You never have to wait for permission or perfect conditions to begin contributing to the healing and flourishing of the world. You can start exactly where you are, with exactly what you have, in this very moment. There's something our culture teaches us from the moment we can understand language that might be one of the most exhausting beliefs humans have ever adopted. It's the idea that you are never enough, exactly as you are right now. That happiness, success, peace, and worthiness all lie just beyond your current state of being, waiting for you to become smarter, prettier, more successful, more spiritual, more organized, more confident, or more of something else. This belief drives most people through their entire lives like a carrot dangling in front of a horse, always moving, always striving, never arriving. Buddhist wisdom offers something revolutionary in our achievement-obsessed world. It offers you permission to simply be. Not permission to become lazy or stop caring about growth and contribution, but permission to recognize that your fundamental worth, your capacity for peace, and your ability to contribute meaningfully to the world don't depend on constantly improving yourself or adding more accomplishments to your resume. You are enough right now to live with dignity, to love and be loved, and to make a positive difference in the lives of others. This teaching goes against everything our productivity-focused society tells us about how to live a good life. From childhood, we're trained to measure our value by our output, our grades, our achievements, our productivity, our progress toward goals. We learn to ask, "What did you accomplish today?" instead of, "How did you experience being alive today?" We celebrate people for what they do, much more than for who they are. Even in spiritual communities, there's often subtle pressure to demonstrate progress through meditation hours, retreat attendance, or mastery of teachings. But what if this entire framework is based on a misunderstanding about the nature of human flourishing? What if the constant pressure to become more, achieve more, and improve more is actually preventing you from experiencing the peace and contentment that are available right now? What if the very effort to constantly better yourself is creating the stress and dissatisfaction that you're trying to escape through self-improvement? This is where the wisdom of trees becomes particularly illuminating. Have you ever seen a tree that seemed anxious about not being tall enough? Have you ever noticed an oak tree comparing itself to a pine tree and feeling inadequate about its different shape? Have you ever seen a young sapling stressed about not producing as much oxygen as the mature trees around it? Trees simply grow at their own pace, in their own way, contributing what they can contribute at each stage of their development. A tree doesn't need to justify its existence by constantly becoming more than it is. It doesn't need to prove its worth through impressive achievements or rapid growth. It simply needs to be a tree, to sink its roots deep, to reach toward the light, to exchange carbon dioxide for oxygen, to provide shelter for birds and shade for other creatures. In doing these simple, natural things, it fulfills its purpose and contributes to the well-being of the entire ecosystem. You can live the same way. You can sink your roots deep into practices that nourish your soul, meditation, time in nature, genuine connection with others, activities that bring you joy without needing to lead anywhere productive. You can reach toward whatever brings light to your life: beauty, learning, service, creativity. You can contribute to the well-being of others simply by being present, kind, and authentic in your daily interactions. You don't need to save the world or achieve enlightenment or become perfect to live a meaningful life. This understanding is beautifully demonstrated in places like the monastery where these teachings originated. When families arrive there for retreat, many come with the same mindset they bring to everything else in their lives: the assumption that they need to accomplish something, learn something, or transform something to make their time worthwhile. They expect workshops, seminars, intensive meditation programs, or structured activities designed to produce specific outcomes. But what they find instead is something that initially feels almost disappointing. There are no swimming pools with exciting slides, no entertainment centers, no adventure courses, or team-building activities. There's no busy schedule of events designed to stimulate engagement or provide constant mental stimulation. Instead, there are quiet walking paths, simple gardens, and long stretches of unstructured time where the main activity is simply being present with yourself and the people you came with. Many visitors initially feel restless or bored in this environment. They're accustomed to constant digital stimulation, packed schedules, and the steady stream of activities that characterize most modern vacations and retreats. The absence of external entertainment forces them to confront something they've been avoiding: the simple experience of being alive, without needing to be doing anything in particular. But something remarkable happens as people adjust to this different pace. They begin to notice things they hadn't seen before: the way sunlight moves through leaves throughout the day, the different sounds birds make at different times, the subtle changes in their own energy and mood when they're not constantly rushing toward the next activity. They start having conversations with their family members that go deeper than logistics and daily planning. They rediscover the pleasure of eating slowly, of walking without a destination, of sitting quietly without needing to meditate or practice or improve anything. This shift from doing to being isn't always comfortable at first. Most people have become so identified with their productivity and achievements that they feel almost invisible when they're not accomplishing something. They don't know how to value themselves or their time when it's not being used to produce measurable results. The idea of spending hours just sitting in a garden or lying on grass feels wasteful, indulgent, or somehow morally questionable. But this discomfort reveals how deeply we've internalized our culture's obsession with productivity and constant improvement. We've forgotten that human beings are not machines designed to produce output. We're living organisms designed to experience the fullness of being alive, to feel, to connect, to appreciate, to love, to simply exist in this remarkable world we've been given. When we reduce ourselves to our productivity, we miss most of what makes life worth living. The permission to simply be doesn't mean abandoning all goals or becoming passive about your life. It means recognizing that your goals and activities arise from and return to a deeper foundation, your basic capacity to be present, aware, and responsive to life as it unfolds. When this foundation is solid, your actions become more skillful and effective because they're not driven by anxiety about proving your worth or escaping from inadequacy. When this foundation is shaky, even your most impressive achievements often feel hollow because they're built on the unstable ground of needing to be different than you are. This teaching becomes especially important in our current era of social media and personal branding, where people feel constant pressure to document and monetize every aspect of their lives. The idea that every experience should be shareable, every skill should be marketable, and every moment should contribute to building your online presence creates an exhausting relationship with your own life. You start experiencing your own experiences through the lens of how they'll look to others rather than how they actually feel to you. Buddhist wisdom suggests a different possibility, that most of the richest, most meaningful aspects of life happen in private moments that don't translate well to social media. The quiet conversation with a friend where you both let down your guards. The moment of appreciation you feel watching rain fall on your window. The sense of peace that settles over you when you finally stop trying to figure everything out and just let yourself be confused for a while. These experiences don't produce content, but they produce something more valuable. They produce contentment. Learning to value these unproductive, unshared moments is essential for developing what Buddhist teaching calls ordinary mind, the capacity to find fulfillment in whatever is actually happening rather than constantly seeking better, more exciting, or more meaningful experiences. Ordinary mind doesn't mean settling for mediocrity or giving up on dreams and aspirations. It means discovering that the peace and happiness you've been seeking through achievement and improvement are actually available in any moment when you stop looking elsewhere for them. This understanding can transform your relationship with every aspect of your daily life. Instead of rushing through routine activities to get to more important things, you begin to see that these routine activities are your life. Washing dishes, commuting to work, having ordinary conversations with family members, these aren't obstacles to overcome on your way to real living. They are real living, and they become meaningful when you bring full presence to them instead of treating them as time to endure. The monastery environment teaches this lesson simply by removing most of the distractions that normally prevent people from discovering the richness of ordinary experience. Without constant entertainment options, people are invited to find interest and even joy in activities they might normally consider boring. Walking slowly on a path, eating a simple meal in silence, sitting still without any agenda except to notice what it feels like to be alive. These activities aren't exciting in the way our culture defines excitement, but they provide a different kind of satisfaction, the satisfaction of being fully present with your own experience. This doesn't mean that all excitement and stimulation are problematic. It means recognizing the difference between stimulation that enhances your capacity to be present and stimulation that distracts you from presence. The difference between activities that leave you feeling more connected to yourself and others versus activities that leave you feeling scattered and depleted. The difference between experiences that arise from genuine interest and curiosity versus experiences driven by the compulsive need to avoid boredom or discomfort. When you give yourself permission to be, rather than constantly trying to become, you often discover that natural growth and positive change happen more easily than when you force them. Like a tree that grows steadily when its basic needs for sunlight, water, and nutrients are met, you develop naturally when your basic needs for presence, connection, and purpose are satisfied. You don't have to push yourself to be more loving. Love arises naturally when you're present with others. You don't have to force yourself to be more wise. Wisdom emerges naturally when you pay attention to your experience without immediately judging or trying to change it. This understanding can be particularly healing for people who have spent years caught in cycles of self-improvement that never seem to lead to lasting satisfaction. The harder they try to fix themselves, the more broken they feel. The more techniques they learn for being happy, the more elusive happiness becomes. The more they strive for spiritual awakening, the more ordinary and unenlightened they feel. Buddhist teaching suggests that this struggle often stems from a fundamental misunderstanding, the belief that you need to become different before you can be at peace. But what if peace doesn't require becoming different? What if it's available right now, in this moment, regardless of how enlightened or unenlightened you feel? What if the very effort to achieve peace is what prevents you from noticing the peace that's already here? This doesn't mean that growth and learning aren't valuable. They are. But they become much more natural and enjoyable when they arise from a foundation of basic contentment rather than from anxiety about being inadequate. The permission to simply be also has profound implications for how you relate to other people. When you're not constantly trying to improve yourself, you're less likely to be constantly trying to improve others. When you can accept your own imperfections with compassion, you can extend that same compassion to the imperfections of your family members, friends, and colleagues. When you're not driven by the need to prove your worth through achievement, you can appreciate others for who they are, rather than for what they accomplish. This shift can transform your closest relationships. Instead of loving your partner while secretly hoping they'll change in specific ways, you can love them as they actually are right now. Instead of parenting from a place of anxiety about your children's future success, you can enjoy and support them as they naturally develop. Instead of friendship based on mutual improvement projects, you can have friendships based on mutual appreciation and acceptance. These changes don't happen overnight, and they don't mean becoming passive or lowering your standards for yourself and others. They mean learning to distinguish between healthy growth that emerges from love and forced change that emerges from dissatisfaction. They mean developing the wisdom to know when to encourage growth and when to simply offer presence and acceptance. The monastery environment supports this learning by creating what Buddhist teaching calls Sangha, community that reflects back your basic worth regardless of your achievements or progress. When you're surrounded by people who value presence over productivity, being over doing, authenticity over image management, you begin to internalize these values yourself. You start to believe that you're worthy of love and respect, not because of what you've accomplished, but simply because you exist. This kind of community is rare in our competitive, achievement-oriented culture. Most of the groups we belong to, workplaces, schools, social circles, even families, implicitly or explicitly rank people based on their performance, their contributions, their status, or their potential. Being part of a community that doesn't operate this way can be deeply healing, especially for people who have internalized harsh standards of self-evaluation. But you don't need to live in a monastery to begin creating this kind of supportive environment for yourself and others. You can start by noticing how often your conversations focus on achievements, problems to be solved, and goals to be reached. You can practice asking different kinds of questions. How are you enjoying your life lately? Instead of, how is work going? What brought you joy today? Instead of, what did you accomplish today? How are you feeling right now? Instead of, how are your projects progressing? These small shifts in how you relate to others can gradually create pockets of acceptance and presence in your daily life. When people sense that you're interested in them as they are rather than as they could become, they often relax into more authentic versions of themselves. When they feel seen and appreciated for their being rather than their doing, they're more likely to extend the same quality of attention to you. The permission to simply be becomes especially important during difficult periods of your life. When you're dealing with illness, loss, failure, or major transitions, the cultural pressure to bounce back quickly or turn challenges into opportunities can add unnecessary suffering to already difficult circumstances. Buddhist wisdom suggests that sometimes the most skillful thing you can do is simply be present with difficulty without trying to fix it, learn from it, or transform it into something else. This doesn't mean becoming passive in the face of problems that can be solved, or accepting harmful situations that can be changed. It means recognizing that some aspects of human experience, grief, uncertainty, aging, disappointment, are not problems to be solved, but realities to be lived through with as much grace and presence as possible. When you can be with these experiences without adding the extra layer of judgment about how you should be handling them differently, you often find that they naturally transform and resolve in their own time. The monastery teaches this through its rhythm of daily life, which includes times for activity and times for rest, times for community and times for solitude, times for learning and times for simply being. This rhythm acknowledges that human flourishing requires both engagement and rest, both growth and acceptance, both doing and being. Modern life often becomes unbalanced toward constant doing, constant growth, constant engagement, which eventually leads to burnout and a sense of disconnection from your own life. Learning to value and protect time for simply being, time when you're not trying to accomplish anything, learn anything, or become anything, is essential for maintaining your connection to what Buddhist teaching calls your true nature. This true nature isn't something you need to develop or achieve. It's the basic awareness, kindness, and wisdom that are already present in you, waiting to be recognized and allowed to express themselves naturally. When you give yourself permission to simply be, you're not giving up on growth or contribution. You're creating the foundation from which authentic growth and meaningful contribution can emerge. You're learning to trust that your inherent goodness and wisdom don't need to be forced into existence. They just need to be given space to unfold. You're discovering that the person you already are, right now, in this moment, is enough to live with dignity, to love and be loved, and to make a positive difference in the world. This discovery doesn't come all at once, and it's often challenged by old habits of self-criticism and improvement obsession. But each time you choose presence over productivity, being over becoming, acceptance over improvement, you strengthen your capacity to live from this deeper foundation. You gradually learn to trust that you don't need to earn your worth through achievement or justify your existence through constant growth. You can simply be, and that is enough. As we near the end of our journey together tonight, there's something essential I want you to understand about the path of letting go and finding peace. This isn't a path of harsh discipline or relentless self-improvement. It's not about becoming a perfect person who never feels confused, never gets reactive, and never struggles with the same old patterns. Instead, it's a path of extraordinary gentleness toward yourself, combined with the radical practice of finding joy in the simplest aspects of being alive. Most people who begin exploring Buddhist wisdom make a crucial mistake. They approach it like another self-improvement project, another way to fix what's wrong with themselves, another method for becoming the person they think they should be. They bring the same harsh, demanding energy to spiritual practice that they've been using to try to solve every other problem in their lives. When they meditate, they judge themselves for having thoughts. When they practice patience, they get angry at themselves for feeling impatient. When they try to let go, they become frustrated with themselves for still holding on. But this approach misses the very heart of what Buddhist practice is about. The practice isn't about eliminating your human imperfections or transcending your ordinary emotions and reactions. It's about developing a completely different relationship with these aspects of yourself, one based on understanding, acceptance, and gentle guidance rather than criticism, resistance, and force. You learn to treat yourself the way a loving grandmother treats a small child who is learning to walk, with infinite patience, constant encouragement, and the deep knowing that falling down is part of the process, not a sign of failure. This gentleness toward yourself isn't weakness or self-indulgence. It's actually the foundation of genuine transformation. When you're constantly fighting with yourself, most of your energy goes into the internal struggle rather than into actually growing and changing. When you approach your patterns and difficulties with curiosity and compassion instead of judgment and force, you create the safe internal environment where real healing can happen. Think about how you would help a good friend who came to you struggling with the same issues you're dealing with. You probably wouldn't tell them, they're terrible for having problems, or that they should have figured everything out by now. You'd likely listen with understanding, offer gentle encouragement, and remind them of their strengths and progress. You'd help them see their challenges in perspective and support them in taking small, manageable steps forward. The practice of self-compassion is simply learning to offer yourself this same quality of kindness and support. But self-compassion in Buddhist understanding goes deeper than just being nice to yourself. It includes the wisdom to recognize that suffering is part of the human experience, not a personal failure or a sign that you're doing life wrong. When you're going through difficult times, dealing with loss, facing uncertainty, struggling with old patterns, feeling overwhelmed by life's demands, the first noble truth of Buddhism reminds you that this is what it means to be human, not what it means to be defective. This understanding can be profoundly liberating. Instead of adding the extra layer of suffering that comes from thinking you shouldn't be suffering, you can meet your difficulties with the recognition that this is simply what life includes sometimes. You can be sad without thinking something is wrong with you for feeling sad. You can be anxious without judging yourself for not being more peaceful. You can be confused without believing that confusion means you're failing at life. This doesn't mean becoming passive or giving up on growth and healing. It means approaching your challenges from a place of acceptance rather than resistance, which actually makes positive change much more likely. The teacher in that French monastery understood this deeply. When he spoke to the families gathered there for summer retreat, he could see that many of them were carrying not just the ordinary stresses of daily life, but the additional burden of thinking they should be handling everything better. Parents felt guilty for getting frustrated with their children. Partners felt inadequate for having relationship conflicts. Everyone felt like they were failing at the spiritual life because they still got caught in reactive patterns. His response was to remind them that they were on a path of learning, not a test of perfection. The spiritual journey isn't about immediately becoming a calm, wise, compassionate person who never struggles. It's about gradually developing the capacity to be with whatever arises in your experience, including your own imperfections and difficulties, with increasing kindness and wisdom. Every moment of noticing that you're caught in an old pattern is actually a moment of awakening, not a moment of failure. This gentle approach becomes especially important when dealing with the deeper layers of healing that often emerge as you begin to live more consciously. As you create more space and stillness in your life, old hurts, unprocessed grief, and buried fears sometimes surface in ways that can feel overwhelming. The temptation is often to push these feelings away, distract yourself from them, or judge yourself for having them. But Buddhist wisdom suggests a different approach, learning to be present with difficult emotions without being consumed by them, like sitting by a fire that provides warmth without getting so close that you're burned. This requires developing what Buddhist psychology calls the mother mind, the capacity to hold your own pain and confusion with the same tenderness you would show to a hurt child. You don't try to fix the pain immediately or talk it out of existence. You simply offer it the safety of your presence, the comfort of your understanding, and the reassurance that you're not going anywhere. Often, this quality of gentle attention is exactly what allows old wounds to finally heal and release their grip on your life. But self-compassion is only half of what makes the spiritual path sustainable and joyful. The other half is what Buddhist teaching calls nourishing yourself with simple joys, the practice of deliberately noticing and appreciating the countless ordinary miracles that surround you every day. This isn't about forcing yourself to be positive or pretending that difficulties don't exist. It's about developing your capacity to notice beauty, goodness, and wonder even in the midst of challenging circumstances. Most people wait for big, special experiences to feel genuinely happy or grateful. They think joy comes from achieving major goals, acquiring significant possessions, or having peak experiences during vacations or celebrations. But Buddhist wisdom reveals that this approach to happiness is like trying to quench your thirst by waiting for rainstorms while ignoring the fresh water that's available in your kitchen sink every day. The most reliable sources of contentment and joy are the simple experiences that are constantly available, but that we've trained ourselves not to notice. Consider this moment, right now, as you're listening. Your lungs are breathing without any effort on your part, delivering oxygen to every cell in your body. Your heart is beating steadily, circulating life through your entire system. Your eyes are able to see light and color and shape. Your ears are capturing sound waves and translating them into meaningful information. If you're in a safe place, you have shelter and protection from the elements. If you have access to clean water and adequate food, you have resources that many humans throughout history could only dream of. These aren't consolation prizes or things to be grateful for only when you don't have anything better. These are genuine miracles that most people take completely for granted. The practice of nourishing yourself with simple joys is about developing the capacity to be genuinely amazed by these everyday gifts. It's about recovering the sense of wonder that most children have naturally, but that gets buried under layers of expectation, comparison, and taking things for granted. This practice can transform your entire experience of daily life. Instead of rushing through routine activities to get to more exciting things, you begin to discover interest and even delight in ordinary moments. The taste of your morning coffee becomes a small celebration. The feeling of warm water during your shower becomes a moment of luxury. The sight of sunlight streaming through your window becomes a daily gift of beauty. These simple pleasures don't replace the need for larger sources of meaning and connection in your life, but they provide a steady foundation of contentment that makes you less dependent on external circumstances for your well-being. There's a teaching story that illustrates this beautifully. A wise teacher told his students, "You have a diamond in your pocket, but you don't know it, and you think you are very poor." He was pointing to the fact that most people spend their lives searching for happiness in external things, while carrying within themselves and around themselves treasures they've forgotten how to see. The diamond in your pocket might be your capacity for awareness, your ability to love, your resilience in the face of challenges, or simply the incredible gift of being alive on this beautiful planet. But discovering this diamond requires a shift in what you're looking for and where you're looking for it. Instead of waiting for dramatic positive experiences, you start noticing subtle ones. Instead of focusing on what's missing from your life, you begin to see what's already present. Instead of comparing your inner experience to other people's outer presentations, you start appreciating the unique qualities of your own journey. This doesn't happen automatically, especially if you've spent years training your attention to focus on problems, inadequacies, and future goals. It requires conscious practice, like exercising a muscle that's been neglected. You might start by setting aside a few minutes each day to deliberately notice things you appreciate: the comfort of your bed when you wake up, the convenience of having light available at the flip of a switch, the fact that you have access to clean water whenever you want it. You might practice what some teachers call ordinary gratitude, appreciation for things so basic that you normally don't even think about them. As this capacity develops, you begin to notice that contentment doesn't actually depend on your circumstances being perfect or even particularly good. You can feel genuinely grateful for small comforts, even when dealing with significant challenges. You can find moments of beauty and peace even during difficult periods of your life. You can appreciate what's working even when other things aren't working. This isn't about denying problems or pretending everything is fine when it's not. It's about developing the capacity to hold both difficulty and beauty, both struggle and appreciation, both challenges and gifts in your awareness simultaneously. This balance between acknowledging suffering and nourishing joy is essential for walking the spiritual path without becoming either overly serious or superficially positive. If you focus only on difficulties and problems, spiritual practice can become heavy and discouraging. If you focus only on positive experiences and try to avoid all discomfort, your practice becomes shallow and fragile. But when you can be present with whatever arises, while also deliberately cultivating appreciation for life's simple gifts, you develop genuine resilience and authentic happiness. The monastery environment supports this balance by creating space for both reflection on life's challenges and celebration of its simple pleasures. People are encouraged to be honest about their struggles and pain, but they're also invited to notice the beauty of natural surroundings, the nourishment of simple meals, and the comfort of genuine human connection. They learn that spiritual maturity includes both the capacity to face difficulties with courage and the ability to receive simple joys with gratitude. This approach becomes especially important as you integrate Buddhist wisdom into your regular life outside of retreat settings. Your daily environment probably includes stresses, responsibilities, and challenges that can easily overwhelm your sense of peace and contentment if you're not deliberately cultivating sources of nourishment and renewal. The practice of finding simple joys becomes like having a reliable source of clean water during a long journey. It doesn't eliminate the challenges of the journey, but it provides the sustenance you need to keep going with energy and hope. Some of the most reliable sources of simple joy are found in connection with the natural world. Even if you live in an urban environment, you can usually find access to sky, sunlight, plants, or weather patterns that can provide moments of wonder and perspective. Taking time to really look at clouds, to feel wind on your skin, To notice how plants grow in the smallest spaces can reconnect you with the larger rhythms and cycles that your life is part of. These experiences don't require any special knowledge or skill, just the willingness to pause and pay attention to what's already there. Another reliable source of simple joy is found in moments of genuine connection with other people. Not necessarily dramatic or profound interactions, but the small exchanges that happen when people are present with each other, sharing a meal, having an unhurried conversation, offering help with a practical task, or simply enjoying each other's company without needing to accomplish anything. These moments of connection remind you that you're not alone in this human experience, and that love and kindness are always available, even in small doses. The practice of nourishing yourself with simple joys also includes taking care of your physical body in ways that feel appreciative rather than demanding. Instead of exercising only to improve your fitness or appearance, you might move your body in ways that feel good and bring you pleasure. Instead of eating only for nutrition or weight management, you might take time to really taste and enjoy your food. Instead of sleeping only because you have to, you might appreciate the comfort and restoration that rest provides. These shifts in attitude don't require changing your behaviors dramatically, but they can transform your relationship with your body from one of criticism and control to one of gratitude and care. As we come to the end of our time together tonight, I want you to know that this path of gentle self-compassion and simple joys isn't a luxury or an afterthought. It's essential medicine for anyone who wants to live with wisdom and contribute positively to the world. When you're harsh with yourself and focused only on what's wrong or missing in your life, you don't have much kindness or appreciation available to offer others. When you're nourished by self-compassion and sustained by regular doses of simple joy, you become a source of these qualities for everyone around you. The work you're doing by listening to these teachings, by considering these practices, by experimenting with new ways of relating to yourself and your life, this work matters more than you might realize. Every moment of choosing presence over distraction, compassion over criticism, appreciation over complaint, ripples out through your relationships and communities in ways you may never fully see. You're not just healing yourself, you're contributing to the healing of the world, one gentle choice at a time. So, be patient with yourself on this journey. Trust that you don't need to perfect anything or achieve any particular state to be worthy of love and respect. Take time to nourish yourself with whatever simple pleasures are available to you. A deep breath, a moment of stillness, the sight of something beautiful, the comfort of knowing you're not alone in seeking peace and wisdom. Remember that the diamond has been in your pocket all along, waiting for you to discover it not through great effort or achievement, but through the simple willingness to see what's already here. As our 3 hours together draw to a close, I want to offer you something that's traditional in Buddhist practice, a blessing for your journey ahead. Not the kind of blessing that asks for special protection or miraculous intervention, but the kind that simply acknowledges the beauty and courage it takes to be human, to seek wisdom, and to choose love over fear in a world that often makes both challenging. Tonight, you've opened your heart and mind to ancient wisdom that has been offering healing and freedom to people for over 2,000 years. You've considered the possibility that peace doesn't require perfect circumstances, that happiness doesn't depend on getting everything you want, and that freedom comes not from accumulating more, but from releasing what you don't actually need. These aren't just beautiful ideas, they're practical tools that can transform how you experience every day of your life. As you leave this quiet space we've shared and return to your regular activities, you're not going back to the same life you had before. You're carrying with you a deeper understanding of how your mind works, how your environment shapes you, and how you shape your environment. You know now that every moment offers you a choice between reacting from old patterns and responding from present moment awareness. You understand that the quality of consciousness you bring to any situation is always more important than the specific details of what's happening. The path ahead isn't about becoming a perfect person who never struggles or makes mistakes. It's about becoming increasingly skilled at meeting whatever arises in your life with the same gentle presence you've been cultivating tonight. When you feel overwhelmed, you can remember to breathe and return to this moment. When you find yourself grasping for something different than what's here, you can practice the art of letting go. When you notice old patterns of criticism or judgment arising, you can choose the path of compassion instead. These practices don't require hours of meditation or years of study, though both can be helpful if they appeal to you. They require only your willingness to remember, moment by moment, that you have choices about how to relate to your experience. You can wash your morning dishes as a meditation in presence. You can turn your commute into an opportunity to practice patience and awareness. You can transform ordinary conversations into expressions of genuine interest and care. The beautiful thing about this path is that it gets easier and more natural the more you practice it. Each time you choose presence over distraction, you strengthen your capacity for presence. Each time you respond with kindness instead of reactivity, you make kindness more available in future situations. Each time you find peace in ordinary moments, you expand your ability to access that peace whenever you need it. But perhaps most importantly, remember to be gentle with yourself as you integrate these teachings into your daily life. There will be days when you forget everything you've learned tonight and find yourself caught in the same old patterns of stress, judgment, and grasping. These aren't failures. They're simply opportunities to practice self-compassion and begin again. The Buddhist path isn't about eliminating all difficulties from your life. It's about developing the inner resources to meet difficulties with wisdom, grace, and an open heart. When you find yourself struggling, remember that you're not alone. Countless people throughout history have walked this same path of seeking peace in the midst of an often chaotic world. The wisdom you've touched tonight has been a source of comfort and guidance for mothers raising children, workers dealing with difficult bosses, students facing uncertainty about their futures, elderly people confronting the reality of aging and loss. You're part of a vast community of human beings who have decided that inner peace and compassionate action are worthy goals, regardless of how challenging the external circumstances might be. As you drift off to sleep tonight, or as you continue with your day, carry with you the understanding that everything you need for peace and happiness is already within you. Not as a potential that needs to be developed, but as a reality that simply needs to be recognized and allowed to express itself. Your capacity for awareness, your ability to love, your natural wisdom, these aren't achievements you need to earn. They're gifts you've always possessed, waiting patiently for you to stop looking elsewhere and discover them right where you are. May you find moments of genuine peace in your ordinary days. May you discover joy in simple pleasures that cost nothing and require no special circumstances. May you treat yourself with the same kindness you would offer to a dear friend who is learning and growing. May you remember that your life has meaning and value not because of what you accomplish, but simply because you are here, breathing, aware, capable of love and wonder. May the understanding you've gained tonight ripen naturally into greater compassion for yourself and all the people whose lives intersect with yours. May you become a source of calm in chaotic situations, understanding in conflicts, and hope in times of discouragement. May your practice of letting go create space for unexpected gifts to enter your life. May your commitment to presence help you notice the countless small miracles that surround you every day. And finally, may you trust that this moment, right now, exactly as it is, contains everything you need to take the next step on your journey with confidence and peace. The path continues tomorrow, but for now, rest in the knowing that you are exactly where you need to be, learning what you need to learn, becoming who you are meant to become. From Moon Mind Temple, with deep gratitude for your presence and your commitment to wisdom and compassion, I offer you this blessing for the journey ahead. May you walk in peace,